This morning, the Government published the Strategic Defence Review. The Prime Minister made a speech and held a press conference in Glasgow, in addition to other media appearances. This follows several days of media briefing. I'm disappointed once again.
Keir Starmer has just faced one of the most humiliating moments of his premiership, and it didn't come from a protester or a political opponent, but from one of the most unlikely figures in Westminster. The Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle. Known for his composure and impartiality, Hoyle rarely raises his voice. But this time, in front of the entire nation, he did, delivering a sharp, unprecedented rebuke to the Prime Minister. His accusation was clear and damning, that Starmer had bent parliamentary rules, disrespected the House, and pushed Britain worryingly close to the edge of executive overreach, one carefully crafted PR stunt at a time. So, what exactly did Starmer do to provoke such an extraordinary response from the Speaker? Why was Hoyle, a man known for restraint, so visibly furious? And could this be the moment when Keir Starmer's carefully constructed image of control finally begins to unravel? Keir Starmer has just faced one of the most humiliating moments of his premiership, and it didn't come from a protester or a political opponent, but from one of the most unlikely figures in Westminster, the Speaker of the House, Lindsay Hoyle. Known for his composure and impartiality, Hoyle rarely raises his voice, but this time, in front of the entire nation, he did, delivering a sharp, unprecedented rebuke to the Prime Minister. His accusation was clear and damning, that Starmer had bent parliamentary rules, disrespected the House, and pushed Britain worryingly close to the edge of executive overreach, one carefully crafted PR stunt at a time. So, what exactly did Starmer do to provoke such an extraordinary response from the Speaker? Why was Hoyle, a man known for restraint, so visibly furious? And could this be the moment when Keir Starmer's carefully constructed image of control finally begins to unravel?
This morning, the Government published the Strategic Defence Review. The Prime Minister made a speech and held a press conference in Glasgow, in addition to other media appearances. This follows several days of media briefing. I'm disappointed once again the Government appears to have breached the principle set out in paragraph 9.1 of the Ministerial Code, that when a Parliament is in session, the most important announcements of government policy should be made in the first instance in Parliament. I recognise that the timing of policy announcement is not always wholly within the Government's control. There may be a need to coordinate announcements on international trade with trading partners, for example, or announcements may be delayed by last-minute legal intervention. But the announcement of the SDR was wholly within the Government's discretion, and highly regrettable that ministers have chosen, once again, to hold major media event before coming to the House. This shows complete disregard for the House and for the honourable members. I note that ministers, when they were in opposition, were not slow to complain when the previous government made major policy announcements outside Parliament.
It was supposed to be an ordinary day in Westminster until Speaker Lindsay Hoyle brought Parliament to a standstill with one of the most severe public reprimands of a sitting Prime Minister in decades. Keir Starmer had just unveiled a sweeping overhaul of the UK's national defence strategy, but he didn't do it in Parliament, where it rightfully belonged. Instead, he chose the stage of a tightly controlled press conference in Glasgow. No prior notice to MPs, no questions from the House, just a podium, cameras, and a speech that felt more like a campaign launch than a moment of democratic accountability. This wasn't a procedural mistake, it was a direct breach of the Ministerial Code. Chapter 5 makes it crystal clear. All major policy announcements must be presented to Parliament first. Hoyle didn't just allude to that rule, he read it aloud, word for word, and made his frustration unmistakably clear. The Speaker accused Starmer of knowingly sidelining Parliament, of sharing sensitive details about Britain's defence posture with journalists before briefing the people's representatives. In doing so, the Prime Minister didn't simply break protocol, he weakened the very institution that holds government to account. By bypassing the Commons, Starmer sent a message, intentional or not, that the voices of 650 MPs, and by extension, the millions of voters they represent, no longer mattered in decisions about war, peace, and national security.
Once again, to hold major event before coming to the House. This shows complete disregard for the House and for the honourable members. I note that ministers, when they were in opposition, were not slow to complain when the previous government made major policy announcements outside Parliament. In fact, the SDR was due in Easter, so I'm sure a day wouldn't have mattered. It's amazing in opposition how everything should be discussed on the floor of the House, but when in government, memories are short on that fact.
That single line, delivered with barely concealed frustration, wasn't just an offhand remark. It was a deliberate, pointed strike at Keir Starmer and his ministers. The very same figures who once thundered from the opposition benches about integrity and standards in public life now appear to have abandoned those principles altogether. To understand the weight of Speaker Hoyle's criticism, you have to rewind to 2020 through 2022. Back then, Labour MPs were relentless in their attacks on the Conservative government for exactly this behaviour. Angela Rayner condemned Boris Johnson for dodging scrutiny. Ed Miliband chastised Rishi Sunak for feeding major announcements to the media before Parliament. And Keir Starmer himself, then leader of the opposition, accused the Tories of being, quote, a disgrace for sidelining MPs on everything from lockdown measures to energy policy and national security. They spoke passionately about democracy, ministerial accountability, and the vital role of Parliament as the heart of British governance. But now that Labour holds power, the script has changed and the silence is deafening. Announcing a major defence review at a polished media event in Glasgow before briefing the Commons wasn't a minor scheduling error. It was a deliberate act, one that placed image above accountability. Speaker Lindsay Hoyle made that clear. The irony is striking. The same Labour front benchers who once demanded transparency and parliamentary respect now treat the Commons as an inconvenience, a formality to be handled after the press conference is over. This moment didn't just spark tension. It crystallised what many inside Westminster have been whispering for months, that under Starmer, Labour isn't merely centralising power, it's refining a new brand of political arrogance.
We are moving to war-fighting readiness as the central purpose of our armed forces. When we are being directly threatened by states with advanced military forces, the most effective way to deter them is to be ready. And frankly, to show them that we're ready. To deliver peace through strength. Every part of society, every citizen of this country has a role to play. Because we have to recognise that things have changed. In the world of today, the front line, if you like, is here. The threat we now face is more serious, more immediate, and more unpredictable than at any time since the Cold War. We face war in Europe, new nuclear risks, daily cyber attacks, growing Russian aggression in our waters, menacing our skies, their reckless actions driving up the cost of living here at home, creating economic pain and hitting working people the hardest. A new era in the threats that we face demands a new era for defence and security. We will innovate and accelerate innovation at a wartime pace, so we can meet the threats of today and of tomorrow.
The phrase asterisk, war-fighting readiness, asterisk, echoed like the opening volley of a military campaign, but this wasn't a battlefield. It was a conference hall in Glasgow, lined with Union Jacks and filled with carefully vetted journalists. Not a single MP was present. Keir Starmer delivered what sounded like a Churchillian call to arms, painting a vivid picture of a Britain under threat, yet notably, none of it had been presented to Parliament. Even the Defence Select Committee, the very body charged with oversight, had not seen the full Strategic Defence Review. Under normal circumstances, that would be unthinkable. And then there's the leak. Key details about the UK's new defence posture appeared in the Times, a full 12 hours before the official announcement. If this was truly about national security, why was sensitive information being drip-fed to the press before being disclosed to MPs? Starmer didn't just bypass Parliament, he choreographed the entire moment for maximum media impact. The optics came first, the accountability came never. This wasn't transparency. It was political theatre dressed up as leadership. And crucially, it's not the first time Starmer's penchant for control and spin has landed him in hot water. Each time he puts image before process, the question grows louder. Is this about governing or simply managing perception?
I know it's been reported that some abuse was directed to the Right Honourable Member, the Leader of the Opposition yesterday, related to claims made by the Prime Minister in this chamber. But regardless of yesterday's incident, I made it clear last week that while the Prime Minister's words were not disorderly, they were inappropriate. As I said then, these sorts of comments only inflame opinions and generate disregard for the House, and it is not acceptable.
He was referring to former Prime Minister Boris Johnson's unfounded accusation that Keir Starmer had failed to prosecute Jimmy Savile, a reckless claim that fuelled public anger and distrust. But Hoyle's message went beyond one politician. His warning was universal. Every leader carries the weight of their words. And now that Starmer holds power, those words, and where he chooses to speak them, matter more than ever. Because when a Prime Minister opts to unveil major policies outside Parliament, under stage lights and scripted questions, it sends a clear and troubling message. Parliament no longer decides, it observes. The Commons, once the beating heart of British democracy, is being reduced to a mere backdrop, a stage set for political theatre. Ministers now skip select committee hearings. Policy papers reach the media before MPs, and according to the Times, 62% of freedom of information requests under Starmer's government have been rejected, the highest refusal rate since records began. The pattern is undeniable. Scrutiny is being sidelined. Power is being centralised. What we're witnessing isn't just a modern administration, it's a managed one, where optics outweigh accountability. So when Speaker Hoyle raised his voice, it wasn't about parliamentary etiquette. It was about something far deeper, the erosion of constitutional responsibility. A Prime Minister who values the camera lens more than the Commons is one who seeks control, not conversation. And in sidelining Parliament, Starmer didn't just bypass it, he humiliated it. Because if Britain's policies aren't debated by its elected representatives, what purpose does Parliament truly serve? More importantly, when a government breaks the very rules it once shouted about in opposition, how can the public be expected to trust it? Let us know your thoughts below. Is this a dangerous shift in how Britain is governed? If you want more sharp, fact-driven analysis of UK politics, make sure to like, share and subscribe. Stay informed, stay engaged.